hello and welcome to the Speakeasy. My name is Paul Feasy, and as always, I'm joined by
Nate Morgan-Locke. Hello.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm okay. Bit of a cold, so I might be coughing and spluttering.
Yeah, you've been suffering a little bit today, haven't you?
I have a little, but I've had some lozenges, which I do find helps. So yeah, I may run off and go and get another lozenge at some point.
Partway through. It's all good. How have you been? Have you had a good Easter?
We had a very good Easter. We managed to get rid of these interns for a short while, which was nice. That really gave us a bit more room around the place. But yeah, been well and excited to get back into the topic for this evening.
Yes.
Which is...
So yes, if you may have seen the thumbnail already, it's called Disney. Think of the children. Think of the children. So yeah, we're thinking a bit about the power and influence that Disney has to kind of shape the culture and particularly young minds. And we thought we'd give you a bit of a kind of potted history of Disney. I mean, people probably know at least a bit about Disney already.
Some of it, yeah.
You may have heard of Disney. Some of you
yeah.
may have heard of them. They employ over 190,000 people. But apparently 3/4 of those are actually just in the theme park
Right.
divisions. And as a corporation, they're valued at $240 billion, which isn't too shabby as things go. It's almost as much as Speak Life. Not far
that
off.
is. And how much would Elon Musk need to raise to be able to buy Disney?
Yeah. So and so Disney was founded back in 1923, but they really went big in 1928 with Steamboat Willie, which introduced Mickey Mouse to the world.
That's right.
And who's gone on to be one of the most recognizable sort of cartoon characters in the world, I suppose.
Yeah.
And then in 1934, they began their first feature-length film, which was...
I believe it was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
It was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Apparently, do you know how far over budget it went in terms of percentage?
No.
400% over budget.
400% over budget, but
it was a massive hit. So they basically did okay out of it in the end. So, but that kind of launched them, and then since then they've produced dozens of groundbreaking and acclaimed films.
Mm.
Obviously, it's evolved into this massive company now, which owns all kinds of different entertainment properties and media kind of properties as well. They've got theme parks across the world. They opened their first one in 1955, and now they own things like probably the most famous ones we already know are going to be things like Marvel, Lucasfilm, Pixar is obviously a part of Disney, but things like ABC, ESPN as well. And we'll see later even more things that we probably never even thought about. So they've become one of the sort of most iconic companies in the world. They were a global phenomena. And they are probably sort of the storytellers of kind of the first order, really, aren't they? They're the highest order because they've been telling stories for years in their films and shows that have kind of sort of captured people's imaginations and have made a huge impact on popular culture. So we're kind of thinking a little bit about what is the impact they've had, and how do we engage with that as Christians?
Yeah, and so you say 1923, Walt and Roy.
Yeah, that was something I didn't know.
You didn't know Roy Disney was Walt Disney's brother?
No, not at all. Yeah. Did you actually know that?
I did actually
know that. Roy O. Disney.
Roy O. Disney, yeah.
You can't imagine the Roy Disney Company, though, can you?
Yeah, Walt is like, and Walt Disney, even just as a name, because it's associated with all of these stories and all this kind of pixie dust, is so evocative. Sounds so fun, and like Walt Disney Company is all kind of there. So so if it's 1923, then that would mean that next year would be 100 years of the company. And yes, it's been interesting to see over that century the ways in which the company or the animation studios, as you say, has grown into other things, but also the way in which its storytelling philosophy has changed, and also its ability to produce high quality animated films. And of course, it's obviously involved in live action movies as well. But just the sense in which you have a number of eras of Disney films.
Yeah.
And sort of those originals from 1937 with Snow White through to, I think the latest Disney movie was Encanto. I think you could put Pixar's Turning Red on that because it was a Pixar movie. But anyway, we're splitting hairs. In some ways, part of the reason I was interested to talk about this is because not only do I do the Speakeasy, I do another podcast with BBC's sitcom writer James Carey called Popcorn Parenting, where we look at movies, mythology, and the Messiah. And as we've thought about family films and faith in Jesus, we've obviously had an awful lot of the films we've looked at have come from the Disney stable. And we've tried in that podcast to really drill down into the particular story that is being told in a particular film, and to investigate that or analyze that from a Christian point of view, to ask what is good about this, what can we can celebrate, what do we need to reject from this, and what is possible to provide a conversation with your children, with your family, that can be pretty positive. So the Popcorn Parenting podcast is something you might like to check out. There's about 25 different films that you can listen to us rabbit on about. So the mythology of the world is something I'm fascinated by, and so Disney, as the most globally approved storytellers who have taken storytelling in incredible directions, are worthy of investigation, not just from a Christian point of view, but like everyone has to come to terms with Disney at some point and ask questions about what is the philosophy behind this film? Is there an agenda that's being pushed here? What formative influence is this having on my children or on me?
And it's probably wider than just, I mean, when you think of Disney in your head, you think of animated films.
Yeah.
And of course, we've already said in our kind of, we've probably got on our radar that it is a bit wider than that it's Marvel, that it's Star Wars, but it's even wider than that, isn't it? Because there are so many companies that you kind of go, I mean, we'll see later, but I apparently GoPro is owned by Disney as well. So even all these companies, Disney is still there behind the scenes, kind of, pulling the strings.
And in part because the advances in film technology and the advances in cameras and all that sort of stuff is going to allow storytellers to tell stories in different ways. And so it makes absolute sense for any animation studio to be at the cutting edge of the development of new technology so that it can do that. I mean, Pixar, the acquisition of Pixar, they always had a kind of distribution relationship with Pixar from the early 90s. But if you go from 1937, what is Walt Disney able to do with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs? This brand new technology that's being showcased in that film, and then you take it to something like the Pixar determination to make the first feature-length computer animated film, which is Toy Story from 95.
I think it's 95. Yeah.
So it would make sense for people to think about the development of the technology alongside of that. And so as the company grows, clearly it's going to want to have first dibs on all this technology.
Sure.
So that kind of makes sense. But yes, as we say, the cultural impact of Disney is a force to be reckoned with, whoever you are. But for Christians in particular, I think there's an interest, because we are people who are telling our children a story. We're telling our children the story of salvation. So this morning as a team, we looked at Psalm 78. And that begins with this injunction that the people of Israel should pass on the story of salvation to their children. They should tell their children the story of Israel, and that we, as those who are in the New Testament, as those who have the story of Jesus, we're going to be heavily involved in sharing that story with our children. And so it's essential if we're people who understand the power of story, that we engage with the most powerful storytellers
in the world. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, one of the books you mentioned in relation to this was a book called The Trojan Mouse.
Yeah.
By Samuel Lively.
Yeah,
I think it is.
Yeah.
And I've not read the book, but I did do a bit of kind of research on it this afternoon. And he talks about sort of the messaging through films, and he talks about how since The Jungle Book in 1967, there's been this sort of slow trajectory where stories have been told from what he calls a loyalist morality to move to a revolutionary morality. And he described loyalism as resting on three pillars. So he talked about, so I guess he's saying that at this point, Disney films would have had these sort of principles behind them. A clear moral and social hierarchy, which includes a higher power resembling Christian God ruling over all of creation at the top, and therefore flowing man over nature, civilization over primitivism, parents over children, patriarch over family. That was his first one. Second one was the existence of good and evil, along with their companion concepts of justice, mercy, sin, and redemption. And then the third was the individual and principle of sacrifice, which includes the values of hard work, personal responsibility, and a willingness to sacrifice the present for future. And the summary I had just went, basically, the revolutionary is just like the opposite of all those things. So it's kind of moved from, I suppose, a quite principally a kind of a moral kind of Christian type world, even if we're not thinking, you know, obviously you can have films which are entirely like that and are not very Christian at all in some ways. But it's very much moved away from that. Is kind of what he was saying.
Yes, and I think so. What one of the things Sam Lively does in that book, so it's published in 2019, and so it's called The Trojan Mouse because, you know, here is this, you know, hidden within the House of Mouse are all these warriors who are going to kind of come in and destroy your family, you know. So the storytelling power is understood there as this stealthy thing in which you can sneak in a whole worldview into people's lives by telling them a powerful story. And that is the dark side of storytelling, is that it can of course be used for ill as well as for good. So the stealthy power of story, which is something that C.S. Lewis has talked about, we've referenced that before, that the stories can steal past watchful dragons, so that you have to be careful about what stories you listen to and what stories you tell and what stories you allow your children to engage with. So I think Samuel Lively's definitely coming from that position of saying things have moved, and I think, as you say, 1967.
He's kind of saying from the Jungle Book onwards.
I think, even though he outlines a series of eras within Disney, I wonder whether this loyalist progressive, loyalist revolutionary thing is perhaps a little bit like, oh, Disney used to be great and unproblematic for Christians, but now it's an issue. And I would say that even those earlier films, whilst I take his point that they have some of these senses of hierarchy of good and evil and that sort of stuff, and that things may have shifted, those earlier Disney films still need to be watched closely and carefully, because there are ideas within them which could be unhelpful for that Christians might not want their children to engage with.
Actually, I mean, at the end of this kind of summary, I was looking at the book. The guy was kind of saying that even in those original films, which maybe had those values, I mean, what he says here is making young loyalists of our children may have positive societal effects, but that's not enough. The spiritually dead must be made spiritually alive. So even you might watch those films and go, oh, look, here's some kind of nice, isn't it, 1950s loveliness, you know, Stepford Wives, kind of that kind of era, I feel. But he's saying that in itself isn't inherently Christian. You can just end up with nice morals.
You don't just want like stories that turn your children into Pharisees, like oh, look, they're staunchly conservative now and have no concept of grace or mercy or whatever else it is. But you know, they've got a framework for understanding the positives of tradition or hierarchy or patriarchy or whatever. Like that's also not, as you say, a Christian conception. As in, it's not a properly Christian conception, because you need to have these ideas fully developed. You need to engage with them from a Christian point of view.
And so Disney stuff is so kind of all encompassing because they own so much and they put out so much all the time that it does affect, what it is shaping people. And I was reading an article earlier about like, how has it affected sort of millennials who grew up in that era from sort of the Little Mermaid, that sort of, I think that was the beginning of sort of, what do they call it? Like the Renaissance era, or like basically when you get that and sort of Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin, that kind of era, and the Lion King all in quick succession, where Disney's kind of back as this powerhouse. And, it was just kind of saying it's obviously had an influence on millennials in certain ways they approach work and things, and, how they don't find fulfillment in work and blah, 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 and bits like that. But I was reading a thing about, pop culture earlier, and it said pop culture is the prevailing worldview expressed primarily through books, movies, music, television, advertising, visual arts. Popular culture is worthy of study for active Christians and those in ministry because it both shapes and reflects those within culture. And he said, it's everywhere, like the air we breathe. And I thought, there we go.
Wait, what?
And it illustrates who we are, what we are, and tries to identify why we're here. And that, I thought that was such a useful thing, because I know in some Christian circles, there's very much this kind of idea that you ought to hold all popular culture stuff basically very much at arm's length and not engage with it at all. Yeah. It is just the world, and it is wrong. But I think there's value in understanding, because the world is so steeped in it. Yeah. And I think, I heard Ted Turner, he was quoting someone else, but he said about popular culture, if religion is the opium of the masses, then popular culture or pop culture is the hardcore Afghani heroin. That's how, you think how much people turn on their, they're on the Netflix, they're on the Disney Plus, they're on the YouTube, whatever it is. We are so steeped in what pop culture is telling us, and the messages are non-stop, that actually as Christians, you're right, we do need to kind of stop and to look at it. And that doesn't mean necessarily we're going to chuck it all out and go, no, it's not a blanket ban and say, we never must watch Disney.
And that's why I think it's got to be a wisdom issue. There has to be people have to engage with these things at the level they feel is the right level for them to engage with. I mean, it might be, and that's talking about pop culture broadly. Rather than Disney in particular. It might be that people say, well, absolutely will not watch Disney because of what, we've discovered about Disney. And fine, like the great thing about these things is they are optional. Like no Christian is duty bound to engage with any pop culture thing whatsoever. And there will be questions about what stage in your, particularly as parents, what stage in your your child's
Get the lozenges
life. I need lozenges quick. At what stage in your child's life are you prepared to allow them to watch this thing? Because the power of story is so, and the power of moving pictures and sound and the songs and everything, that these things will stick. They will stick with your child, and they may find those things very difficult to shake off. And so how we, decide what is right for us to engage with at any particular point is going to be a significant question for us. We need to think Christianly about our consumption of pop culture.
Yeah. And actually, I think that takes me back to, the idea of when do you allow your child to watch something? And it may be that there are things within things you allow them to watch. Well, it's going to be within things you allow them to watch. There are going to be things that you go, that is not a Christian worldview. But again, it's, just remembered that Ted Turner thing. You might even have been there at the same
I'm sure I was
Ted
Turner
years ago. But I remember him saying specifically he was watching the Gotham series with his daughter, I think. And there's a scene in that where there's a bully who's been picking on Bruce Wayne. And Alfred takes Bruce Wayne, kind of, he's at this point sort of 13, 14, takes him to the bully's house. And he and Bruce Wayne knocks on the door and basically just lays the kid out, smacks, punches him in the face. And then Alfred the butler comes up and he's like, if you ever touch him again, all this kind of stuff, very threatening and whatnot. And Alfred's kind of teaching him to stand up for himself, against the bullies, because he's going to become the Batman,
Hold on. Spoilers.
Sorry. And wait till you hear about Darth Vader. And he said that his daughter at that point just said, that is so wrong.
Okay.
You know, because she's like, that's just not the way. And he said they had a really good chat off the back of that about, you know, I was going to say, what would Jesus do in that situation? But, you know, it was a conversation about what is the Christian response in the face of the bully? Is it to turn around and basically just pound them into submission, or is there a different way?
Yeah.
Now, some people might say, oh, you shouldn't expose your kids to that kind of thing. But obviously, in that setting, that context, it allowed them to have some kind of conversation.
Yeah.
Was a gospel thing. And it's kind of, I suppose, what we did when we were looking at our movie tag. There are lots of things in all those movies where you go, it's not a very Christian thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But you're pulling out the threads and going, what's the kind of gospel stuff in there?
Yeah.
For good or for ill.
Yeah.
You know? So,
and absolutely. And trying to see what is it about this particular story, this particular film, that has resonance with parts of Scripture, with parts of the Bible. So, because that's going to be our guide, because, you know, as we've said, the story that we live in, that we actually do live in, and that we are impressing upon our children, and that we're sharing with our children, we're using to help our children have an understanding of the world, is the story of redemption revealed to us in Scripture. So if we've been given that, that will then be not just what we can look at, but the way that we can look at everything else. And there is a really significant value in taking those opportunities as pop culture can bring them up to us, and as culture can bring them up to us, and, you know, and great literature can bring them up to us, as aside from, you know, just the latest iteration of a comic book story. That there are ways in which we can have rich, theologically informed conversation with our children, and which can help us to enjoy our children, right? And like, there's something really, you know, really joyful about sharing great stories with your kids. And the challenge for us as we think about something like Disney is to think, well, to what extent can you do that? And you know, where do you need to be where? Yeah.
And part of the reason some of this came onto the radar, I mean, you know more about this than I do, it was there's a sort of bill happening in the States, in Florida.
In Florida, one of the 50 states,
which has kind of brought Disney into this sort of slightly political realm.
Yeah.
Because, well, can you tell us a bit about what this bill is and why Disney have got
there's
involved?
A bill called the Parental Rights in Education Bill, which I think is called HB 1557 or something like that.
Those lines.
And I've read it. You can find it online. It's actually very short. And basically, Republican Governor Ron DeSantis introduced this bill, and it really talks about parental rights in education. So it's to what extent can schools, public schools in Florida, by which they mean state schools, because obviously public school doesn't mean like posh private school in the US. What public schools are allowed to talk about with children at particular ages, and are allowed to instruct children on at particular ages, and the amount that they have to be getting permission from parents in order to have those conversations. Now, the thing that really drew attention of the media was the fact that it prohibits the teaching of the instruction of sex education to grades kindergarten to third grade, which, Micah, can you remind me how old's third grade? I think it's like, is it 8 years old? It's up to 8, I think. So from
it's about year 3 in British terms is kind of 8 years old.
Okay, so it might be I think they're slightly out of sync.
Yeah,
anyway. But anyway, so it's the youngest children, infant school, essentially.
Right. Yeah.
That there would be a ban on basically sex education being taught to children of that age, and that schools had a responsibility to engage parents in that. Now, the way that was then taken by the progressive media and the left wing was to call it the "Don't Say Gay" bill. So this bill was called Parental Rights in Education, was then retermed the Don't Say Gay bill. And it said, you can't, you're not allowed to mention being gay, and you're not allowed to mention LGBTQ plus issues. This, therefore, is an oppressive piece of legislation that is attempting to erase gay people and LGBTQ plus people. And therefore it must be stopped. So Disney, who were, I think, the largest employer in Florida because of the theme parks, was then put under immense pressure from a small number of its LGBTQ plus staff members to make a statement about this. Disney basically said, we don't really want to get involved, and then were kind of, their hands were sort of forced as employees kind of became much more active in trying to generate a statement from the company. Disney then comes out with a statement to say, we don't believe that this Don't Say Gay bill should be allowed to pass. And then Ron DeSantis, who by all accounts is likely to become a Republican candidate for presidential nomination in 2024, he then decides to take on Disney by putting in more legislation which would remove I think it's a special tax situation for Disney, and to prevent them from having certain freedoms that they had to build and plan things within the Disney parks. So effectively, you've got this battle now between, which is involving the state, the state government, the schools, and a private company, and also in the middle of it are parental rights in terms of children. So within this, you've got this question, this fundamental question about whose children are these? Do they belong to their parents? Are they under the kind of control and under the responsibility of their parents? What responsibility do their teachers have for them? What responsibility does the state have? And weirdly, what responsibility does Disney, which is obviously a company which has an awful lot of children involved in it because it makes animated films and runs theme parks. So there are huge questions about who is responsible for the child and who gets to instruct the child and who is having an influence on the way the child thinks, that come right down into the middle of this. Now, what then took it further was that a journalist called, his name Christopher Rufo, decided that, I don't know how he managed to do this, but he managed to get hold of some video clips of some private Disney staff meetings that were on Zoom or something, and released onto Twitter, I think, some excerpts from these meetings in which high-level Disney employees were talking about having a particular agenda, that they wanted to achieve certain things within LGBTQ plus issues, and that might be the queering of stories or whatever else it is. And that was the thing which then led to the response in saying, this isn't a Don't Say Gay bill, this is a okay groomer bill. So in the side of like, oh no, you've renamed it this thing, which is a distortion of what it is. We're going to say that if you believe that this bill should not, then you must be a groomer. And so you've got this incredibly toxic environment in which people are attacking each other and thinking, what is the way that this thing can just be taken further and further and further and further? And from a Christian point of view, we want to say, no, the God is ultimately responsible for children. He has given that responsibility to parents. There are family, there is the state and the church. And within that, there actually isn't really a place for a multinational storytelling corporation like Disney. And so as Christians, we have to consider how we engage with Disney Plus, Disney theme parks, everything else, all the merchandising. And as I said before, we have to think Christianly about the media we consume. We have to be careful with that sort of stuff because it's so powerful, and we know the power of it.
And I suppose one of the things we were talking about, thinking about this then, was that if let's say Disney are pushing a more progressive agenda, or even if they were decided to push a more kind of traditional kind of values system through, the temptation is for people to jump on that and be like, well, look, this company is, so progressive, or this company is on our side because it's believing these traditional things. And actually, I think some of our discussion has been around the idea that they don't really care. Disney don't care about LGBTQ plus rights by themselves. And they don't really care about, traditional values. And then they have that battle even within them now. In the West, it's very much we'll give the LGBTQ things. But of course, there's a lot of editing and stuff that goes on to make stuff work in China and Eastern markets.
So they can remove scenes from films so that they can feel free to release them in China. And there's a great question to ask: if the scene can be removed from a particular film and the film still holds together, then there's a question about whether this was really doing the job that people thought it was doing in terms of,
because if they really cared, let's say they did care about progressive kind of ideologies, they would just say to China, up yours, China, we believe in this, and this is bigger than that. But clearly, what talks is the money.
And if they cared about human rights, they would be asking serious questions about the treatment of Uyghur Muslims in China, and would be choosing
Mulan, wasn't there? I think,
and
with the filming of that.
And so you've got this, as a corporation, their concern is to make money. Like they want to make as much money as possible. That's what they're in the game for.
And you can tell that by what they've acquired over the years, their assets. And hopefully this is going to work. We should be able to show you. We found an excellent graphic earlier that shows us what it is that Disney own. So hopefully this is this coming up on the screen? See this, guys? So we found this, and I have to scroll around it. Companies that Disney's own. And so if we just have a quick look through all this, I mean, there's ones here that we will know. It's a lovely graphic, and we might put the link down in the thing for you. Marvel, you can see a lot of things contained within Marvel there, the Marvel Studios, as well as all the comics. There's all the stuff here to do with Walt Disney Studios, and in the middle here, they've acquired Lucasfilm, including things like Industrial Light and Magic, and all the stuff that goes with that, LucasArts, Lucas Online. You can see a massive kind of portfolio of parks and experiences here. In Shanghai, Hong Kong, you've got the Disneyland California, you've got the main sort of Florida resorts, Disneyland Paris. And then, I mean, ABC, all kinds of things there, probably lots of channels. Maybe if you're American, you might know more of these than maybe we do here. Times Square Studios, all kinds of stuff. Lots of things down here. I think these ones it is color coded. It's hard to remember what they all are. But you see, we've got Hulu here. All kinds of various software companies, things that you might not have even come across. We've got a construction company over here. They've got this kind of stuff. ESPN. So lots of stuff here under the ESPN banner as well. Lots more TV stuff for Disney there. Theatrical groups, music groups, and then over here, Endemol, 20th Century Fox as well. I mean, Sky, so in the UK, Sky PLC, National Geographic, History Channel, those kind of things. I mean, it's absolutely stonking the amount of stuff. they've got their fingers in many pies there. So the idea that they are not about the money seems very unlikely.
And that is the measure of their success as a company is simply that they are able to keep growing, keep increasing, aggressively acquiring other competitors so that they own everything. And what's hilarious is that if the Disney Corporation was to tell a story in which a corporation like Disney existed, they would be the bad guys. You just don't. You have all of these great stories about someone like, raging against this kind of gigantic, organization, these big evil capitalists who are just there to make the money and making these big decisions that crush everyone underneath. And inevitably we've been kind of programmed to think of them as the bad guys.
Yeah.
So it is just baffling that. Yeah.
But it's not that they're not, in one sense, they're not a hypocritical company, because you could say, hey, look, over here, you're pushing these agendas, but yet over in the East, you're doing something completely different. That's completely hypocritical.
Yeah.
It would be hypocritical if their big thing was these ideologies, but their big thing is, how do we make a profit? And they're absolutely consistent on that all the way through. So you can't pull them up on that. That's what they're doing. And as a company, they're incredibly successful. You don't make a $240 billion company by being inconsistent on making profit.
And the hypocrisy is in a sense that they just say one thing to one group of people to make money with them, and one thing to another group of people to make money with them. So it's all driven by the shareholders. And the question, I suppose, is the extent to which people feel compelled, like under obligation, to watch the next Disney movie, or to go to the park, or to buy the toys and the t-shirts.
Well, particularly though and because their main, I suppose, in the main, or at least as you think of it, a big chunk of what they do is for children. Is aimed at children, and even adults who love Disney, and you do get those kind of people who are quite invested in it. It's come from a childhood thing. And I was reading earlier about them. I thought this was a really kind of interesting quote. So one reason Disney's appeal and merchandising is so effective is because when Disney releases a film, it's accompanied by mass marketing of toys, character bed sheets, promotions at fast food restaurants, and more. An undisputed pioneer in cross marketing was Walt Disney. Critic Henri Giroux voices the suspicion that Disney's pretense of innocence functions as little more than a promotional mask that covers its aggressive marketing techniques and influence in educating children to the virtues of becoming active consumers. And that's the
totally.
It's all about making your children consumers. Really, because
what is it like? Do they really care which T-shirt you're buying from the Disney store? Has it, whether it's got Mickey with rainbow ears to celebrate, Pride or something, or whether it's got, Mickey with Stars and Stripes ears or Union Jack ears to
dollars are the same color.
They exactly they like that's the idea that your engagement with this is based upon keeping you as a consumer, as a customer, and as a consumer of products that cannot satisfy, and that they are kind of designed not to satisfy.
So like the stories never end. That's
and that's another huge thing about this, which from me, thinking about the storytelling point of view, is that once you're into franchise storytelling, once you've got once you own Star Wars, you're not just going to go, we'll stop at that point, right?
Not just going to be like, there's a couple of films.
It's like, no, we're going to make you more films because we have fans who want to see them, and we're just going to keep providing them. So to go back to the Ted Turner, it's what was the line again? Like
hardcore Afghani heroin.
Hardcore heroin, right? Like that's what they're going to keep doing. So they're just, get ready for this next one. Here's a trailer for this one. Here's a post-credit scene just to whet your appetite for another sequel. And the reboots, and you just like this, like it never ends. And you can't, like, at some point you've got to say, I'm going to get off this train, and I might need to leap out of the window because it's not going to stop. And there is this sense in which the lack of contentment that is built into the marketing of these stories is matched only by the lack of contentment in the amount of profits that Disney have made. So there's a great bit in Proverbs 30, I think it is, the things which are never satisfied, which never say enough. And one is the the earth, one is the fire and the grave, right? It's never going to be satisfied. It will never be content. And this is the thing with so much of the franchise storytelling, is that they know that there's just more money to be made. There's more stuff that could be brought out. And the thing that broke my heart, I suppose, as someone who absolutely loved a franchise, was I love Toy Story. I love Toy Story 1, loves Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3. And they wrapped it up. And then, of course, they have to go and make another one. Well, because there's more to be discovered in this world. Well, that's the argument. But no, because there's a new audience that needs to be exposed to these toys again. It needs to be exposed to the merchandising opportunities again. And we need to just keep on feeding this.
Yeah.
Because it's going to keep on generating more and more profits. And it's devastating, because as Christians, we've learned the secret of contentment, and yet we've been placed into a culture and a pop culture and a society which capitalism feeds on a lack of contentment, dissatisfaction. You need a new one. You need more. You need to try this. Want. And so it breeds in us this desire for stuff and for experience, which will never be sated. And so as Christians, again, one of the ways we need to engage with our engagement with stories is to say, is this a story that can end, that has a beginning, middle, and end, and closes off and finishes, and that can be left behind? Or is this story being pushed not by creative ideas and integrity, but just by this more profit, make more money, make more stuff. It's just, and it's never ending.
We're kind of running on, so I wonder whether, maybe just to kind of summarize, and you can tell me whether this is wrong or we want to add a bit more to it. I suppose then, I mean, two of the big things we pulled out really is that when we've got something like Disney, but Disney are not the only thing, but they're just one of the bigger ones out there. We're thinking about, what are the messages? How is it shaping the way we think, particularly our children think, but also us as adults, because we see they don't just own, Disney itself doesn't just own children's things. They've got lots of things as well. So think about what the message are. And I suppose we're not saying, therefore Disney is bad, don't watch any Disney, because it's quite possible to sit down with your children and watch things when you might say, we don't really agree with that in there. But you can have a discussion about it, and you can draw things out of it. And there are good things, and I'm sure there'll be good things in there. We go, that's a positive as well. So think about the messaging that comes through in these things. But then I suppose the other thing is just being aware of as we've just been talking about, the consumer nature of it, the fact that it breeds discontentment, this sort of fact of like, I must see that, what do I do when I get home? Well, I have to switch on the TV and get into this thing, or get on whatever platform, because there's another episode, there's another film, and and I think, maybe those are the two big things, thinking about the contentment issue and thinking about the way these things shape us. And neither of those means necessarily you must get rid of your Disney Plus subscription or anything like that.
And I would want to say to people, these things are optional. You can choose whether you do this. And if your children would be so devastated, or you would be so devastated because you'd feel like you were missing out, like, listen to that that concern, right? Or that reaction, and ask yourself whether that is the reaction of a person who's content, or the reaction of someone who just wants more. Right? So, if a drug addict says, "Oh, I could stop anytime, I just like doing it," it's like, well, why don't you stop them for a bit? Oh, I just don't want to. And if you can't stop yourself engaging with this stuff, and it feels too catastrophic a decision to cancel Disney Plus or something, then maybe you should cancel Disney Plus. Like, if it feels so overwhelming, it's like, this thing is optional. Like, you don't need to engage with this, and you don't need to give your money to this company. Like, you have no need to do it. And asking yourself the question about whether this is the right thing for me to do, and asking yourself the question about whether this, as I say, the Popcorn Parenting podcast is all about engaging with these stories and thinking, are these a way for us to talk about the gospel with our children in a deeper, richer way, because stories are so powerful and world building so fascinating and all of that sort of stuff as well.
And I think as well, just to recognize on that different Christians will probably come down to different places. Like some people will say, yep, it's time to get rid of this or not watch that. Other Christians will say, we're okay with this, but we're not okay with that thing, and that's and that doesn't make anyone better or worse than anyone else. So I think that's helpful to keep in mind as well. We are kind of running out of time, so I reckon should we do the quiz? I think we could do the quiz.
The Walt quiz,
because we've got a bit of a quiz because it's been quite intense.
Has it?
But this
I've been probably a bit intense. I needed more lozenges.
In a good way.
That's the thing.
It's been a good intense, but I don't know what this quiz is going to be like. So
this could be intense as well.
So we've got a few questions for us. I think. Have you, Jack, over there?
Yes.
Here he is.
I do believe so. So hopefully this is all working.
Just to say, Jack is from Scotland, where Disney actually means does not. So
that is accurate. Okay. So yes, I am myself quite a big Disney fan. I am right now wearing a Wall-E hoodie.
It's a marvelous film.
It's a great film. It's one of their best. I've compiled a little quiz for you guys. 11 questions if you're ready for them all.
11 questions.
This should be nice and quick.
Okay.
I'll do my best to sort of keep a score. And I think I've managed to scale them from in difficulty, so I think they'll get harder as they go on.
Okay.
But we'll see what you can do.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first question, nice and simple. In what year did Walt Disney himself die?
Ooh.
And a bonus point if you can say what his last words were.
I think it was 66.
I'm going to go 56.
No. 55. They opened Disneyland in California. He didn't die a year after that.
Well, I don't know. It's too late now.
I think it's 66.
The correct answer is 1966.
Oh, yeah. There you go. Well, all right then.
Right.
Last words.
Yeah,
no, I don't know what his last words were.
What would he have said? He would have said something like "to infinity and beyond." That was years later. I don't know. What were his last words, Jack?
Apparently, before he died, he wrote down on a piece of paper, "Kurt Russell."
Kurt Russell.
Just Kurt Russell. And nobody, not even Kurt Russell himself, knows what it meant.
This feels like the beginning of a conspiracy. Like this.
It's
some sort of shady cabal.
Okay. Oh.
Best guess is that maybe he had an idea for a film that would star Kurt Russell, but he never got to voice it before.
Kurt Russell.
Could have been.
It's a funny little story.
Imagine the pressure Kurt Russell must have felt under that.
Somewhere in the Disney multiverse. That has happened.
Like if anyone you didn't know personally wrote down your name as their final act before they shuffled off this mortal coil, that's quite nerve-wracking. But if it's Walt Disney, that seems mad. Anyway, sorry.
Okay.
On to question 2. And
right.
Anyone watching, if you have a fancy, you can have a go in the comments as well if you want to take a guess at these. So question 2, what was the last fully 2D animated movie that Disney made?
Fully 2D.
Yeah.
Because they did The Princess and the Frog, didn't they? Which was like animated, which is kind of still in the CGI
era,
but
it's in that sort of the last properly 2D.
Did The Little Mermaid have any like computer stuff? Because
I feel it's going to be something like Emperor's New Groove or something like that. It's like a smaller level
Hercules, like in that era.
Yeah.
It's around that time.
I'm going to go Emperor's New Groove.
This is specifically just like a 2D film. It's not like it has to be 100% two-dimensional. I mean, like as opposed to films like Tangled and Frozen, which are 3D.
I'm going for Princess and the Frog then. Now you've said that.
Just to clarify.
Okay. Okay.
What's your take? What's your answer?
I'm still going to go Emperor's New Groove.
Okay, the correct answer is Winnie the Pooh, 2011.
Winnie the Pooh. Goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay, it's all right. There's a
scene
in it that
didn't know there was a Winnie the Pooh film.
I've never engaged with any of the Disney Winnie the Pooh stuff. That's probably why. Only the original books.
Yeah.
No. So yeah, I know Princess and the Frog was close. It was the second last one.
Oh,
but
you were
go.
not
So I was in
far
the
off.
right
people tend to
All right.
forget Winnie the Pooh. Yeah. I think the success of Tangled and Frozen ended up really sinking the 2D animation for Disney, and people have not been happy about that, sadly. So, question 3: what was the first film of the Disney Renaissance?
Oh,
I think Little Mermaid.
Little Mermaid.
I'll go for that.
For a bonus point, can you name the year that the film?
I think it's Little Mermaid as well. And
I'm going to say, it's like 19. Is it 1990 or 91?
I'd go 90.
Or
Oh,
maybe
no.
a bit later, maybe 92. But it's one of.
I might even go. Oh, I might even go.
I think 89.
Could be 89.
Yeah, do you know Little Mermaid is the first film I saw at the cinema.
Was it?
Yeah. Or at least the first film I remember seeing at the cinema. So I would have been young.
But what year are you going?
I will go for.
I'm going to go. Actually, I'm going to go 92.
92 for Nate and Paul.
91.
91. Okay, well, you were right on the film. It is Little Mermaid. The person who got it correct was Nicole Heaven in the comments. It is 1989.
Oh,
I said 1989.
Shocking.
Wow.
I was thinking I couldn't have seen it. I was only 3.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I could have.
Yeah.
Right before the 90s. So that was the first one that really kicked off the Renaissance and brought Disney back after the Dark Ages that followed Walt Disney's death. So obviously these films are typically quite expensive. Which Disney animated film had the highest budget?
Oh.
Yes, animated film.
Does that include like computer animated or?
Yes.
Okay. Oh gosh.
Um.
It's been like a massive. What's been like a massive one?
I'm
going for Wally.
I'm gonna say Frozen 2.
Oh,
Frozen 2.
Yeah, Frozen 2.
Frozen 2 for you as well?
Yeah.
The correct answer was Tangled.
It was Tangled.
$260 million.
Wow.
Yikes.
That was a lot of hair.
I'm going to guess it was the hair.
It was the hair. It's got to be the hair. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have thought they were putting a lot of money in Frozen 2 after Frozen. So, but less hair. That's what it was.
Much less
Not as much
hair.
hair.
Yeah.
Not as good. So question 5. What is Disney's highest grossing animated movie? So this is the highest grossing one. Forget budget. This is the one that
made
the most money. Yeah.
Frozen, surely, because I think it's
I think it's Frozen 2 though. I think Frozen 2 might have surpassed it just because the anticipation for Frozen 2 was so great because all these people were surprised by the mega hit that was Frozen.
I'll go with Frozen.
Okay.
You go with Frozen 2, why not?
Yeah.
Paul's going with Frozen 1. Mike is also going with Frozen 1. Nate, you're going with Frozen 2.
Right.
Frozen's very high, but Frozen 2 grossed more with $1.45 billion.
That is, you could buy a bit of Twitter with that, couldn't you?
It is better than Frozen 1.
You could check out the Popcorn Parenting episode on Frozen 2. We did it in season 1.
Yeah. Okay, question 7. Wait. Yes. Nope. Question 6. I'm losing track. What is Disney's lowest rated animated movie? So in terms of like critical acclaim or score, there's technically 2 answers for this. So
wow. I mean, it's probably one of those ones that is it like fully animated. It's not like a live action plus some weird animation.
People are quite negative about things like Robin Hood. I personally love Robin Hood.
Yeah.
But...
the Black Cauldron or something like that. It'll be like one of those really
Peter and the Dragon or something.
Yeah,
was that got a person? Is that all animated?
Yeah.
Peter and the Dragon? One of those?
I feel like that was
the lowest rated Disney movie.
Is this the Adventures of Mr. Ichabod and Mr. Toad?
Mr. Toad. I know what film you're
I'll just go for Robin Hood because I got nothing better.
I'm going to go Black Cauldron.
Robin Hood, Black Cauldron, Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. So on Metacritic, tied for the lowest animated score, Pocahontas from Nicole Heaven. There are 2 answers here. One is Brother Bear, and the other one is Chicken Little.
Ah, yeah.
Both of which have 48.
Wow. I think I even realised Chicken Little was part of it, but yeah.
No, it was Little. Chicken Little, not big. Sorry. So also on Rotten Tomatoes, I believe both of them have scores of like in the late 30s, like 30%, 36%, 37%. So yeah. So this one's a fun one for me. Question 7. What is the name of the video game series that heavily features Disney as playable worlds and allies that fight alongside you in combat?
Kingdom Hearts.
Kingdom Hearts. Nate, Paul?
Yeah, Kingdom Hearts. I was going to say, yeah.
Micah? Doesn't have an answer. Yeah, no, that was right. Kingdom Hearts.
Oh.
One of my favorite video game series.
Bringing the knowledge.
I think the very first conversation I had with Jack involved a conversation about Kingdom Hearts. So yeah,
it's you don't know me if you don't know that I like Kingdom Hearts. So, right. So question 8: when did Disneyland first open?
1955.
55. I think we've had this.
Nice. Can you get the month as well?
September.
April.
July. I'll give you both a point for it though.
1 in 12.
Okay. So, question 9: who is the current chief executive officer of Disney? The current CEO.
Is Iger the
No, I
CEO,
think his
or is
name's
he-
Chapek. Bob Chapek. Bob
Oh.
Iger, I think, was the previous guy.
Okay. I don't know anything about
But
the
anyway, this is only because I've had to read up
structure
some
of
stuff
Disney's executives.
Yeah.
Yep. So correct answer is Bob Chapek, and Bob Iger was the previous one.
on. Yeah.
There we go. Bonus point for saying the previous one.
So this one I'll say, like, if you get it within a certain range is okay. Like within like one of the answer. How many Star Wars productions have been made by Disney since they purchased the Star Wars property in 2012? And as when I say productions, I mean films, TV shows, and web
goodness.
Oh,
miniseries. I'm not going to include the video games or the books.
All right. So
or the
you've
comic
got
books or whatever.
you've got the last
You've
three
got
of the
films.
trilogy.
Rogue One,
Rogue One,
Solo.
Solo 5.
Mandalorian,
Yeah.
Boba Fett,
Yeah.
and then how many? They did the
Clone
there are the Clone Wars
Wars.
and
It's gotta be a
Rebels, but I don't
thing.
know if that's all been under Disney. And then there's this. They did another one recently, but I can't remember the Bad Batch thing.
Goodness, you know your Star Wars stuff. Are you going
I'm
10?
gonna go with 10.
And I'll just say 11, just so that I've got the advanced number.
Let me go ahead and look, because the answer I've written down is like 19. Yeah, like
It's not an exact science.
oh no, it's not.
Apparently,
I think if you were to include like video games in that, it would go up
Okay.
to like somewhere like
Yeah.
26 or 28 or something
Yeah.
like that. You know,
It's almost
Oh, well,
like
they're
they've
doing-
just been milking
They've got the
it,
Obi-Wan
really.
thing as well coming out,
Oh,
haven't
that's
they?
true. Yeah.
yeah, there was. Yeah, I wasn't including Obi-Wan because it's not out yet.
No,
Otherwise,
yeah,
I'd also
okay.
include Rogue Squadron, which is the next movie they're making. But also there was a bunch of micro series called like Blips, Forces of Destiny, Galaxy of Adventures, Rollout, Galaxy of Creatures, and there's another one.
Not
It's
heard of
just
those.
a Galactic Pals. Yeah, there's like a Star Wars kids brand sort of going on as well.
Mm.
So yeah, no, I just wanted to make a point about how much Star Wars stuff we've gotten since Disney have purchased it.
Mm.
And before it was like 3 TV shows. I mean, there was a big expanded universe.
Yeah,
but
Yeah.
it's not been this big.
Affy Sinclair says, "Would you include Lego Star Wars?" I don't know, but you should because it's great. You've played Lego Star Wars.
Oh, I've not.
Oh, you should.
Okay. I've played with Star Wars Lego quite a lot, actually.
It's not the
but-
same.
Yeah, the thing with Lego Star Wars is they're always like tributes to like pre-existing Star Wars content. They're never like original Star Wars
No.
content, like a sequel or anything. You know, because it's Lego. But yeah, and final question, number 11.
Cool.
And again, if you get it within a certain range, I'll give you the point for it. How many movies have been released under the Disney banner? This was according to Wikipedia. So this is
Oh,
How
overall
many,
movies.
like, including all the like
Everything.
Disney Channel stuff as well?
what, like Marvel? Like
This is the number I got from
Goodness me.
Wikipedia. So yeah, if you get within like I don't know, like
Because they said it
20,
was
50
like
of this.
60. They got to 60 in terms of Disney Animation Studios with Encanto, I think was like the 60th. They made a big deal about that. But it's clearly got to be something in the hundreds. And I'm going to say, Actually, 1,200.
Okay.
600.
600. Micah, you got a guess? No. Okay.
Just total random. Like,
just go for any number. Like, I will give the point to Paul on this one because he was closer. The answer was 487.
Wow.
According to
I feel
only 400.
I feel I should confess. I quickly Googled how many films are on Disney Plus.
Oh, did you?
That was 600.
Cheat.
Yeah, so that was how many films have been released under the Disney banner, which was like
Disney
listed
banner.
on Wikipedia when I looked up like Disney,
there we go.
Disney Studios. So yeah,
cool. Well, we've run on a little bit there, but hopefully, guys. Well, thank you for that, Jack. First of all,
Thank
that was a
you.
great little quiz there. Hope you guys at home enjoyed that and had a go on it. I don't know how you did. Yeah, good discussion. Hopefully, enjoyed the stuff about kind of thinking about the messaging and what it is kind of people are consuming. Do we need to keep consuming? What does it say about whether we're content? Food for thought. Guys, if you've got more thoughts on things we've been saying, do let us know down in the comments. Do keep commenting through the week, and we'll might pick up on it next week, or we'll try and reply to you in the comments as well. Thanks for joining us, and hopefully you'll join us again next week. Have a good week until then. Take care. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.